Hey Emma, have you ever noticed something strange about learning English?
Strange? Like, what kind of strange?
Well, most learners spend years studying grammar, memorizing phrases, and practicing pronunciation, but they completely overlook certain words that actually make a massive difference in fluency.
Really? So people are learning a lot, but still missing something essential?
Exactly. In fact, studies suggest that around 90% of English learners consistently miss these words that native speakers use all the time. And that gap is often what keeps learners from truly sounding natural.
Whoa, 90%? That's huge. But what kind of words are we talking about? Are they fancy words, idioms, slang, or something else entirely?
That's the interesting part. They're not complicated or rare. These words are simple, everyday words, but they're used in ways that learners almost never notice. They appear in conversations, movies, even casual texts, yet learners often skim right past them.
So it's like missing the secret keys to understanding real English?
Precisely. And today on Talk Easy Daily, we're going to uncover these words, show you how to use them naturally, and even share some surprising patterns that most learners completely miss.
I can't wait. And I bet viewers are going to be checking themselves, thinking, wait, do I use these words?
That's the idea. By the end of this episode, you'll not only recognize these words, but also understand how they can elevate your fluency and make your English feel much more authentic.
Okay, I'm sold. But before we dive in, can you give me one example? Just a tiny hint.
Sure. Imagine you've mastered all the grammar rules, yet in a conversation, the person says something like, "I'm kinda tired of that." Many learners freeze at kinda. It seems small, but missing it makes the English sound stiff, unnatural.
That little kinda makes such a difference. I never thought something so tiny could matter that much.
Exactly. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. Today, we'll explore dozens of these words, their hidden uses, and some patterns that most learners never even realize exist.
Okay, Alex, I'm hooked. So what's the plan? Are we going word by word, or is there a bigger system?
Great question. We'll start by looking at categories of words that learners miss. Then we'll dig into their real-world usage, common mistakes, and little hacks that help you internalize them quickly. And along the way, we'll sprinkle in mini stories and examples to make it all stick.
Perfect. And viewers, get ready. You might catch yourself thinking, oh no, I missed this one too.
Exactly. And remember, if you're enjoying this already, hit that like button, subscribe, and comment below with the first word you think you might be missing. We'll be reading them.
And trust me, some of these are going to surprise you. So Alex, where do we start?
Let's start with the first category, the words that connect ideas but are almost invisible to learners. Words that you hear in every conversation, yet most people don't even notice them.
Invisible but powerful. Sounds mysterious. I love it.
That's the beauty of it. These words are small, easy to overlook, but once you know them, everything you say and understand in English starts to click into place.
All right, viewers, brace yourselves, because the first set of words is going to change how you hear English forever.
Okay, Emma, so let's start with the first category, the connectors. These are the words that glue sentences together. Think of them as the invisible threads in English.
Connectors? You mean words like and, but, or so? I use those all the time.
Yes, you do. But here's the twist. Most learners use them in the basic sense, but miss the subtle variations that native speakers rely on. For example, but isn't just but. It can subtly signal contrast, surprise, or even sarcasm depending on context.
Wait, so one tiny word can carry so much meaning?
Absolutely. Take the sentence, "I wanted to go, but..." A learner might stop there. A native speaker, however, adds, "but I couldn't," or "but it was too late," and the "but" signals a nuanced shift. It's almost like the brain sees a pause, a pivot.
Oh, so missing that nuance is why English sometimes feels flat for learners.
Exactly. Another example is so. Learners often use it to mean therefore, but in spoken English, so has a much broader life. So what happened next? Or I was tired, so it creates a flow, a rhythm in conversation.
Okay, I think I get it. These connectors are like little musical notes in English, small, but they shape the whole melody.
That's a great way to put it. And here's a quick tip. Whenever you hear a native speaker, focus on how they use connectors. Notice the subtle pauses, the stress on but or so. That's where fluency really starts to feel natural.
I love that. Can we do a mini exercise? Like, how would a learner practice these?
Sure, take a simple story, like describing your day. Write it down with basic connectors, then listen to a podcast or show and notice how they vary. Replace your basic but and so with the variations you hear. Over time, your brain picks up on the rhythm automatically.
That's super practical. And it's funny how the tiniest words have the biggest impact.
Exactly. And this is only the first category. There's another set that's even sneakier, the filler words.
Filler words? You mean like and
Those, yes, but there's more. Words like, and actually are often skipped by learners because they seem meaningless, yet they're essential in natural conversation.
Wait, people actually use actually all the time? I thought it sounded formal.
That's the trap. Actually can be formal in writing, but in speech it's often used to correct, emphasize, or gently disagree. I actually think that's not right. The word softens the statement and makes it conversational.
Oh, wow. So skipping it can make your English sound robotic, even if it's correct.
Exactly. And like is another one. Many learners avoid it because teachers say it's informal or sloppy, but in conversation, it's a rhythm tool. I was so surprised. Notice how it stretches the sentence naturally.
Okay, so if I remove like, my English might feel too stiff, even if it's correct.
Correct. The trick is to use these words intentionally, not overdo them. Native speakers balance them effortlessly, and that's why fluency feels smooth.
Got it. So connectors and fillers, two invisible categories that make English flow.
Yes, and here's a quick pattern learners miss: the placement of these words. Actually often appears at the start of a sentence, like in the middle, and at the end. These positions are subtle cues that signal meaning and tone.
Oh, wow. It's like a secret map of English rhythm.
Precisely. And viewers, here's a challenge for you. In the next conversation you hear, spot at least one but, so, or actually, and notice its effect. Write it down and try it yourself later.
That's a fun minigame, and I bet you'll start noticing words you never paid attention to before.
Exactly. And that leads us into the next category, which learners almost always miss: modal helpers.
Modal helpers sounds fancy.
They're not really fancy, they're just little words that modify verbs, but learners often underuse or misuse them. Words like might, could, should, and would.
I know those, but I feel like I've seen people use them incorrectly all the time.
That's exactly the point. For instance, many learners overuse can for ability and permission, but skip could, which is more polite or hypothetical. Could you pass me the salt sounds softer than can you pass me the salt.
Oh, I've noticed that. And should is tricky too. People say, you should do this, but it can feel bossy if misused.
Right. In conversation, should is often softened. You should maybe try this approach. That maybe changes the tone completely.
So missing these small modal helpers can make your English sound unnatural or even rude without you realizing it.
Exactly. And would is even sneakier. Learners often use it only in conditional sentences, but it appears in polite requests, hypothetical ideas, and storytelling. I would have gone, but I was busy.
Oh, wow. That one small word carries time, mood, and politeness all at once.
Exactly. And here's a tip. Listen to native conversations and notice how often these words appear. You'll see patterns, like would often signaling hypothetical past situations or polite suggestions. Internalizing this changes your English almost instantly.
Amazing. So connectors, fillers, and modal helpers. It feels like we've uncovered a hidden layer of English that textbooks never tell you.
That's right. And remember, these are words you already know, but missing their subtle roles is why your English may sound correct, but not natural.
Wow, I think I need a notebook just to track these.
That's actually a great idea. Writing them down, noticing their patterns, and practicing in real speech is the fastest way to absorb them. And viewers, here's a secret. Once you master this layer, your conversations will instantly feel more fluent.
And the best part? You don't need to learn complicated vocabulary. You just need to notice the words everyone else is already using.
Exactly. And in the next segment, we're going even deeper. We'll uncover words that express emotion, hesitation, and personality, things that truly make your English sound human.
Emotional words? That sounds juicy. I can't wait to show viewers what comes next.
Good, because these words are often overlooked, but they create the difference between sounding like a textbook and sounding like a native speaker.
All right, viewers, take a deep breath because we're about to dive into the words that give your English character and charm.
All right, Emma. Now that we've covered connectors, fillers, and modal helpers, it's time to move into a category that really gives your English personality: emotional and hesitation words.
Oh, I like the sound of that. So these are words that show how you feel, right?
Exactly. And here's the tricky part. Learners often avoid them because they think they're informal or unimportant. But these words are everywhere in real conversations. Words like actually, honestly, literally, basically, and even small ones like ugh or wow.
Wait, ugh? That counts as vocabulary?
Absolutely. Think about it. If someone tells you a story and you say, ugh, I know, that's so annoying, you're expressing empathy and emotion. Without it, your English can sound flat, even if your grammar is perfect.
That's true. I remember when I first watched English shows, I kept thinking, why do they keep saying literally all the time?
That's a classic example. I was literally dying of laughter. Most learners would avoid literally because it feels dramatic or incorrect. But in spoken English, it adds emphasis and personality.
So missing these small emotional words makes your English technically correct, but lifeless.
Precisely. And hesitation words are another big part. Words like, well, let me see, and I guess give speakers time to think without breaking the flow. Learners often skip these because teachers tell them to speak clearly and directly.
Oh, I do that. I try to speak perfectly without pauses, but then I freeze when I need time to think.
Exactly. Native speakers fill those gaps naturally, and that's why English sounds effortless. For example, well, I guess we could try that approach. That well and I guess makes the sentence softer, more natural, and conversational.
I love that. It's like giving yourself a safety net in a conversation.
That's a good way to put it. And here's a quick exercise for viewers. Next time you're telling a story in English, intentionally add one hesitation or emotion word per sentence. Listen to how it changes the tone.
That sounds fun, and I bet viewers are going to notice they're already using some of these words unconsciously, right?
Exactly. That's the hidden power. These are words you already know, but learning to place them strategically makes your English sound authentic.
Okay, so we've got connectors, fillers, modals, and now emotion and hesitation words. What's next?
The next category is verbs. And these aren't just any verbs. They're the ones learners commonly misuse in natural speech.
Misuse verbs? Like irregular verbs?
Not exactly. Irregular verbs are usually learned in grammar lessons. These are common action verbs that have subtle differences in spoken English. Words like do, make, take, get, and have.
Those seem basic, but I bet the devil's in the details, huh?
Exactly. Take do and make. Learners often confuse them. I do my homework is correct, but I make my homework is not. Simple, right? But there's more. In expressions like make a decision versus do a favor, the combinations are fixed. Native speakers instinctively know which verb fits, but learners often hesitate.
Oh, yes. I remember learning make a mistake versus do a mistake. That one always trips people up.
Right. And then there's take versus have. Take a break versus have a break. Both exist, but they're used differently depending on context, region, or formality. Learners often pick one arbitrarily.
So even these tiny verbs carry a lot of weight in natural English.
They do. And get is another tricky one. It can mean obtain, become, or even arrive, depending on context. I got a new job. I got tired. I got to the station. Learners often underuse get because they think it's too informal.
Wow, so mastering these verbs is like unlocking everyday English.
Exactly. And here's a practical tip. Every time you hear native speakers, pay attention to these verbs in context. Notice the fixed phrases and idiomatic expressions. Writing them down or repeating them aloud helps you internalize the natural patterns.
I love that. And viewers, this is where your English starts to sound human, not just correct, but alive.
Exactly. And combining these verbs with connectors, fillers, and emotion words creates English that flows naturally. Your sentences start to breathe. They don't just stand there on the page.
Wow, it's like we've uncovered the hidden skeleton of English.
Perfect metaphor. And here's a curiosity gap for viewers. The next segment will introduce even sneakier words, tiny particles and prepositions that learners almost never notice, but which completely change meaning.
Tiny particles and prepositions? Now I'm really intrigued. I can't wait for viewers to see how these small words pack a huge punch in conversations.
Good, because missing these words is why learners often misunderstand native speakers or sound overly formal. By the end, you'll see why even the smallest words can be game changers.
All right, viewers, get ready. The next segment is going to blow your mind with words that are hiding in plain sight.
All right, Emma, we're now entering the territory of words that seem almost invisible but completely change meaning. Particles and prepositions.
Invisible words? That sounds tricky. Like in, on, at? Those tiny ones?
Exactly. Learners often know the words themselves, but the subtle differences in usage are what create natural English. For example, interested in versus interested on. Only one is correct, and using the wrong preposition instantly marks non-native usage.
Oh, yes. I've definitely seen learners say interested on before. It sounds off.
Exactly. And particles like up, off, out in phrasal verbs can completely change the meaning. Take off versus take up. Take off could mean leaving or removing, while take up could mean starting a hobby or occupying space.
Wow, one tiny word can flip the whole meaning of the sentence.
Exactly. That's why learners often feel confused when they hear sentences like, I took up running, then took off for the airport. Without understanding the particles, it sounds like gibberish.
Oh, wow, that explains so many times I've watched English shows and thought, what did they just say?
Precisely. And here's the key. These particles are everywhere in natural speech. Native speakers use them instinctively, but learners need deliberate exposure and practice.
So how can learners practice these?
Start by noticing patterns. Pick common phrasal verbs like look after, give up, come across. Write a mini story using them, then check your story against native examples or videos. The more you see them in context, the easier it becomes.
That makes sense. I guess it's like learning the rhythm and logic behind the words rather than memorizing definitions.
Exactly. And prepositions aren't just about verbs. They appear after adjectives and nouns too. Think afraid of, good at, in charge of. Missing the preposition changes the meaning or makes it sound unnatural.
Oh yes, good at instead of good in. I've seen learners mix that up so often.
Exactly. And the beauty is, once you start noticing these small words, your comprehension skyrockets. You suddenly understand phrases that seemed confusing before.
Okay, that's particles and prepositions. Tiny but super powerful.
Right. And now let's move to another category that learners often overlook: common phrases and collocations.
Collocations. I remember that term. That's like words that go together naturally, right?
Exactly. Think of phrases like make a decision, take a break, catch a cold. Learners often say do a decision or get a cold, and it sounds off. Collocations are how words naturally pair in English.
Oh yes, that's so frustrating when you know the individual words but not the combinations.
Exactly. And collocations aren't just verbs. They exist with adjectives too. Strong coffee versus powerful coffee. Technically both make sense, but only one is natural in English.
Oh wow, I never realized the adjectives mattered that much.
They do. And then there are adverb combinations like deeply concerned or highly recommended. Using the wrong adverb can make your sentence technically correct but subtly awkward.
So collocations are like the secret code of natural English. Once you crack it, you instantly sound fluent.
Exactly. And here's a practical tip. When you learn a new word, don't just memorize the word itself. Memorize the word in a common phrase. For example, commit goes with a crime or to memory, not a mistake.
That's such a useful strategy.
I feel like learners spend so much time on vocabulary lists but miss these natural combinations.
Exactly. And here's the kicker. Noticing collocations in movies, podcasts, and conversations is a game changer. You start predicting what words go together, which boosts both speaking and listening comprehension.
I love that. So by mastering particles, prepositions, and collocations, learners start to see the hidden structure of English everywhere.
Precisely. And here's a curiosity gap for viewers. The next segment is going to introduce words that often carry hidden emotion, attitude, or opinion, things that native speakers sprinkle all the time, but learners almost always skip.
Hidden emotion words? That sounds intriguing. I can't wait to show viewers what we uncover next.
Good, because missing these words is why English can sound correct but dull. Once you know them, your conversations start to feel alive.
All right, viewers, brace yourselves. The next part is going to reveal the secret sauce of natural, expressive English.
At least, Emma, now that we've gone through connectors, fillers, modal helpers, emotion words, verbs, particles, and collocations, it's time to see them in action. Real examples make all the difference.
Yes, I always learn better when I can hear how these words fit naturally into a story or situation.
Let's start with a simple story about a friend's day. Imagine someone says, "So, I was kind of tired this morning, but I decided to go for a run. I actually didn't want to, but I forced myself."
Oh wow, that's packed with words we just discussed.
Exactly. Look at all the small words. So starts the story. Kinda softens the feeling, but shows contrast and actually emphasizes the speaker's hesitation. Without these, the sentence would sound stiff. I was tired this morning. I went for a run. I didn't want to.
Yeah, that version sounds correct, but completely flat.
Right. Now, let's add some modal helpers. I could have stayed in bed, but I should get some exercise. I might feel better afterward.
Wow, that adds possibility, obligation, and even a bit of self-motivation.
Exactly. Each modal word subtly changes the meaning and the tone. This is why native speakers never sound mechanical. They layer these small words naturally.
Okay, let's do another example. Maybe a workplace scenario.
Perfect. Imagine a conversation at work. "Hey, do you have the report? I was kinda hoping to get it by noon, but I understand if it's not ready yet. Actually, could you send it as soon as possible?"
Oh, I see. Connectors, fillers, and modals all together. And the actually makes it polite without being stiff.
Exactly. And notice the emotion words too. Kinda hoping softens the request, making it sound natural and human.
That's really powerful. I can see how learning just the grammar wouldn't capture this.
Exactly. And let's bring in particles and phrasal verbs. I had to look after the new client, but I got through it. I ended up taking on more work than I expected, but I managed.
Oh, I love that. Without look after and take on, the story loses some of its real-life flavor.
Right. And collocations add even more authenticity. Take a break, make a decision, catch up on emails. These are fixed patterns learners must internalize to sound natural.
Wow, so one story can include almost every category we've discussed.
Exactly. And here's a fun exercise for viewers. Take your own daily story, your commute, workday, or weekend plans, and try rewriting it with connectors, fillers, modals, emotion words, particles, and collocations.
That's a great idea, and you'll notice how much more alive your English sounds.
Let's do one more example, this time a casual conversation with a friend. "Hey, I literally couldn't believe it when I saw the new cafe. I was like, wow, this place is amazing. I guess we should try it sometime, don't you think?"
Oh, that's full of the hidden words we've talked about. Literally, like, I guess, all little words that make the conversation natural.
Exactly. And that's the key takeaway. These words aren't complicated or advanced. They're small, but they carry meaning, tone, and personality.
And when learners use them correctly, their English instantly sounds fluent and human.
That's right. Real fluency isn't just about grammar or vocabulary. It's about mastering these tiny but powerful words and understanding how they work together.
I love that. And viewers, here's a challenge. The next time you speak English, consciously sprinkle in at least 5 of the words we've discussed today. Notice the difference in your tone and confidence.
Exactly. You'll be surprised how much more natural your English feels. And remember, these words are everywhere. Podcasts, movies, casual conversations. Once you start noticing them, you'll never forget them.
I feel like my brain is already picking up on words I missed before. And viewers, trust me, this is just the beginning.
Absolutely. And in the next segment, we'll go even deeper. Advanced insights and strategies for internalizing these words so you can use them effortlessly in any situation.
Advanced insights? Ooh, I can't wait for viewers to see the next level. It's going to take English from good to naturally fluent.
Exactly. But before we move on, remember, practice with stories, listen actively, and pay attention to these small words. They may seem tiny, but they're the secret to real English fluency.
All right, viewers, get ready. The next part is going to unlock the final level of mastery, where your English really starts to feel like a native speaker.
Exactly. And remember, viewers, the key is consistency and attention to detail. The more you notice these words in everyday conversations, the more naturally they'll come out when you speak.
So don't rush, focus on patterns, practice in context, shadow, repeat, and internalize. That's the roadmap to fluency.
Perfect summary. And here's a thought-provoking question for viewers. Which of these small words do you think you're missing the most? Drop it in the comments. We want to hear your experience and help you pinpoint your gaps.
Yes, and remember, mastering these words is what separates correct English from truly natural, confident English.
Absolutely. And in the next segment, we'll recap everything and give a strong conclusion with actionable steps that viewers can start using today.
All right, viewers, get ready for the recap because the transformation is about to become crystal clear.
Emma, wow, what a journey we've been on today. Let's recap everything for viewers so they can really see the transformation.
Yes, it's been a lot, but if you follow along, your English will feel completely different.
First, we explored connectors and fillers, tiny words like but, so, actually, and like that make your sentences flow naturally. These small words add rhythm, tone, and subtle meaning that textbooks rarely cover.
Then we dug into modal helpers like might, could, and would, which convey possibility, politeness, or hypothetical ideas. Using them correctly makes your English sound more nuanced and confident.
Next, we looked at emotion and hesitation words. Words like honestly, I guess, kinda, or inject personality, emotion, and empathy into your conversations, making them human rather than robotic.
We also covered common verbs, particles, and prepositions. Tiny words like take up, look after, good at, or in charge of dramatically affect meaning. Missing them is a common reason learners sound unnatural.
And finally, we explored collocations and natural word combinations. Words like make a decision, catch a cold, highly recommended are fixed in usage, and learning them in context is what makes your English flow naturally.
Plus, we didn't just list words. We shared stories, examples, and mini exercises so viewers could see how to use them in real conversations.
Right, and the big insight is this. These words are not advanced or rare. They're simple, frequent, and extremely powerful. Missing them is why even advanced learners can sound non-native, but mastering them gives your English natural rhythm, confidence, and clarity.
Exactly. And the advanced strategies we shared, pattern recognition, shadowing, contextual practice, focusing on frequency, and multisensory learning, are the tools to internalize these words effortlessly.
So here's the takeaway. It's not just about knowing English words. It's about using the right words in the right way at the right time in natural patterns. That's the secret to sounding fluent and confident.
And now it's your turn, viewers. Don't just watch, practice. Notice these words in conversations, podcasts, or shows and start using them today.
Yes, write short stories or mini dialogues with connectors, modals, emotion words, particles, and collocations. Shadow native speakers and mimic their rhythm. Pay attention to tone and placement.
And most importantly, don't be afraid to experiment. Using these words correctly takes practice, but every attempt brings you closer to natural English.
Exactly. And if you take these steps, in just a few weeks, you'll notice your English flowing more naturally, sounding more confident, and connecting better with native speakers.
So viewers, start today. Make a small change, practice consistently, and watch your English transform.
And don't forget, if you found this episode helpful, like, comment, share, and subscribe to Talk Easy Daily. Your practice starts with awareness, and your growth starts here.
Absolutely. And comment below, which of these small words do you think you're missing the most? We'll read your replies and help you level up.
That's right. Remember, the 90% of learners who miss these words are missing the subtle magic that makes English truly fluent. But now, you have the tools to join the top 10%.
Let's go, viewers. Transform your English one word at a time.